Hello and welcome to the show. We are here today going to be talking about racing game economies, maybe come up with some ideas how I would fix them, and just generally waffling about my favourite sort of games. Now this is not specifically related to Gran Turismo 7, it does involve it, but I've been planning this video for a while before Gran Turismo 7 even came out. There's not a specific attack on that one, but it is going to be involved because it is a very good example of one extreme. Anyway, back in the day, when I started playing racing games many years ago, they didn't have economies as such. You would complete races, unlock cars, use those cars to win more races, unlock more, and so on and so forth. That's just about how every single racing game worked. And then Gran Turismo came along and changed that. You would earn money for winning races, and then you could use that money to buy cars that you wanted. You weren't necessarily, you would win prize cars, of course, but you could go down specific routes. You know, if you wanted to go and race a Ferrari, you could, or you wanted to go and buy a Lotus, you could. And it was up to the player. Now this was great to give you choice, because you chose how you progressed through the game, you chose what cars you wanted to race, and games like that, and Forza then came along and did a similar thing. Fantastic. I love this as a way that a game works. I love this as a progress system. The problem is how you balance everything. Because now just about every single driving game has this. There are still a few, of course, that don't, but even games like Grid, for example, are now sort of more focusing on the economy side of things, if you like. And balancing it is tough, and honestly, a lot of the times doesn't go the right way. There are two extremes. You have traditionally what is the Forza extreme, which is give you a bunch of cars really early, like huge amounts of cars, huge amounts of money, so that nothing means anything. And then you have, certainly currently, the Gran Turismo 7 extreme of takes 100 hours to earn one car. And neither are ideal. The problem with the Forza system is, as I said, you know, cars are kind of meaningless. When, after a couple of hours, you can have just about everything you could want in the game, it's just not as special. You know, everyone's got Ferraris, McLarens, Lamborghinis. None of it is particularly special. None of it's particularly meaningful, if you like. You've not really had to work much for it. You know, everyone can have whatever they want. I will say there's a small caveat in all of this. Sometimes I'm going to be looking at this as a content creator, and that might vary slightly from regular people who play a game. For me personally, I don't mind this as a system. Okay, I can certainly see the drawbacks for it, but me personally, I don't mind it too much. The plus point for this is, and even before I made videos, to be fair, I played games like this, but I like to have freedom to do what I want. And the Forza games, yes, they throw a lot of money and cars at you, but the upshot of all of it is it does give you that freedom. You want to go and mess around with a bunch of supercars and see which is fastest? Awesome, you can do that because you can have all of them, or you can buy them all fairly easily, so you can go and compare them. I don't have to spend 20 hours trying to earn enough money to then go and buy all of them. Yes, I know some of that is for the sake of a video, potentially, but, you know, said back before I did this, I'd still like to do this kind of thing. Whether it be take a bunch of, you know, generic cheap cars and see what would happen when you modify them with silly engines, and all of this sort of stuff is possible because Forza gives you the money, it gives you the cars even, to go and be able to do this. Yes, as a sort of gameplay, as a game progression system, it is not the best, it might not be the most captivating to everybody. It does more rely on you being able to make your own fun out of a game. It does rely on me going, the player being able to go, okay, I want to go and do this with the game, and the game is giving me the tools, rather than you know, here's a sort of structure to progress through the game. That I absolutely get. It's different play styles for different people, that is fair enough. And Forza, for a while, hasn't necessarily been great when it comes to the sort of progression, when it comes to the game. Hell, Horizon 5, you can finish a single player very quickly, and then take a couple of days, I think, from what I remember. It was a while ago now, but it doesn't take long to get through all of that, complete all that, and hell, you don't have to win most of the races. Like, you can just progress wherever you finish in them, you still get a good chunk of money. As far as a sandbox for playing around with cars, yes, it is very good for that. You can get most of the cars you want, and, you know, the money very easily, which, yeah, does have its, you know, has its upsides, but I can see why some people would not necessarily really enjoy this, why they'd get bored of it, why they'd run out of things to do quickly. I will say Forza does do one thing relatively well. You do have the festival cars, you have the playlist cars, if you like. Okay, I know you have some DLC cars, but there are plenty of sort of car pass ones, I should say, sorry, that are DLC you have to pay a little bit for, but I'm talking about the free cars that are given for completing certain objectives. Now, this is, I think, a good compromise in many ways. It's not perfect, you're never going to be able to please everybody at the end of the day, but I feel like it's a decent enough compromise. You have cars that you can only get by completing certain challenges, and you have to complete certain challenges at certain points in time. So these cars are rarer. These cars are that little bit more special. They're something that you have to work for, perhaps, and something that not everybody is going to have. So it gives you that, these cars are kind of slightly cooler. I mean, the drawback of the way it's done is that these are timed challenges, which means, for example, if you're on holiday and a car you want is released during that week where you're away, you can't get it, or you're busy that week. Not everybody is able to be, playing these games all the time. You might just miss something. I haven't got the Aventador SVJ, for example. I think it's coming around again at some point soon. But yeah, I missed it the first time. I just, whatever reason, I can't remember now. It was a while ago. Wasn't able to complete it. Didn't have time at that moment in time to complete the event. These sort of timed events are a little bit of a pain, and I guess perhaps the compromise would be have some, maybe some particularly tough races, particularly tough restrictions that were permanently around that you had to complete. Although then do you start getting, do you have to suddenly start being really good at the game for a chance to unlock your favourite car? If, say, your favourite car is that Aventador, do you have to be incredibly... It's... whichever way you go with it, someone's going to be a bit unhappy. You can never please everybody with it. Forza's system is a way of having some exclusivity with cars without being insanely skill-based, without being too ridiculous, and while still giving you a lot of freedom, because at the end of the day, okay, yes, I'm choosing the Aventador because it's one I happen to remember at the moment. Yes, I like the SVJ. However, it doesn't mean I can't still do the stuff I want to do with the game. I can't still have my fun with the game because I've missed one car. I can still go and tune up silly hatchbacks if I want to, and go and race it against all the other Lamborghinis, for example. So I feel like that's Forza's way of kind of combating it. Yes, it is still a very just chuck cars at you sort of a game, but there is that system in place that I feel mostly works. Not perfect, but mostly works. So I mean, so yeah, there's the kind of plus points and downsides of Forza's system. We go to the other extreme with Gran Turismo 7. Now, I will say I was about 90% done with this video at the point at which they upgraded Gran Turismo 7, updated Gran Turismo 7, and everything I said was pretty much out of date now. Although, some of the points still do kind of ring true, but I was going to re-record this bit, because, yeah, now it is a lot more, if you like, up to date. The essence of a game like Gran Turismo, even Gran Turismo Sport and so on, is that while, you will be earning some money as you play through it, you won't be able to just go and buy absolutely everything, and, that theory is you'll have that little bit more special garage. And that was definitely the case. Certainly before the update, it was taken to an absolutely extreme level. You finish the cafe stuff, the single player main thrust of it, if you will, and you'd end up with maybe around 5 or 6 million credits, depending on how much you spent on modifying cars and so on. And you got a few prize cars along the way, but that was sort of it. You could spend that money. I bought an Alpha 155 DTM car, and well, I bought something else that ate a lot of the money. It was the Sauber C9, I think, and by that point I only got like $1 million and a bit left or something along those lines. Kind of got 2 cool race cars, and you're kind of at a point where that's a lot of money, and then it took a very, very long time to go and get that money again. Now, it was truly awful, and for the sake of this part of the video, I'm going to ignore the microtransactions. We'll get to that later, but for this part, we're just going to look at it from a pure kind of gameplay point of view. Yes, it does mean that you had to pick and choose the cars that you wanted. Your garage was a little bit more, it's a little bit more unique to you, but it was so extreme and so ridiculous on there, because the Sauber and the Alpha weren't actually too expensive. There are plenty of cars in that game that all cost 20 million credits. There's a classic Alfa Romeo, there was last time I played a classic Alfa Romeo on there, it's 20 million. McLaren F1 race car, 18.5 million. McLaren F1 road car was something like 20 million. Porsche 917K also some 20 million. Now, there are all cars that people want. I like those cars. They're exciting cars. And yes, everybody wants to have a go with some of those. And while, you know, you don't want a game to be able to give you all of the cars immediately, there was literally no prospect of me ever even getting any of them. Because even I play racing games for a living, I don't have the time to go and sit and grind through all of the races to get that level, that amount of money. And because it put that goal so ridiculous, I lost interest, really. Even just modifying cars was unbelievably expensive. And that loss of freedom lost my interest in the game. Now, it has got better with the new update. The races do pay a bit better. There are some endurance races. In general, it is better now. It's still by no means, I say by no means perfect. The circuit experience stuff, basically you do sectors around a lap of a track and you gain to try and beat a time if you get all gold. That all adds up to a decent chunk of money. I think I saw somewhere it's about 50 million credits if you do all the tracks and all the sectors gold. That's a nice chunk of money. That is a good chunk of money, and those don't take a crazy amount of time. Like, to get that 50 million will take a bit of time, but that's actually a good tool to help you kind of learn the tracks. It's actually really good. That's really clever. But with the price of the cars, they're still only going to net you a couple. If you're after some specific vehicles, it's not actually necessarily going to net you as many as you would like. The endurance races, I think they're about an hour long for 500,000 credits, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll have fun perhaps doing them. I'm not going to go and grind those races out because, again, if I want one of those real high-end cars, that's just a lot of repeating the same races over and over again. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of the economy. Maybe some other sneaky ways to make. I haven't gone crazy in depth, haven't had time to go crazy into depth with all of it. It's definitely considerably better, much, much better on that side. Although, I still feel like Gran Turismo 4 worked it a bit better. I still think that is the better example of this style of economy on that one, because that had loads and loads of races to be doing, had loads of championships, had loads of prize cards you got for winning the various championships. The special condition races themselves were very good for earning money, and you earned really interesting cars. And not only were there fun cars that you could win, a bunch of rally cars and race cars and all of that sort of stuff, you could sell the cars, do the championship again, and, you know, get the vehicle again and keep doing that. There was one particular race back before I cheated my save file on Gran Turismo 4 that was good for making a decent amount of money in a fairly short amount of time. I think about $250,000 per car, and the race was only a couple of laps or something. So yeah, you could earn, I mean, you know, you weren't going to be getting, but you'd have to still spend a good bit of time going through it, but you could earn enough money to do what sort of messing around you wanted to, essentially. And even if you ignore that side of it, even if you weren't going to be doing that kind of grind for that one particular car, you got so many race cars from so many sort of different events that you got most of the high-end vehicles that you wanted along the way, or a lot of exciting ones to be messing around with. And I definitely feel like, well, it has been a big improvement on Gran Turismo 7. The economy on some of the older ones was better. It was more fun. Again, maybe looking at it from my perspective, as I want to have access to more stuff, more toys to play around with, etc. Maybe that's a little bit, again, personal preference, but yeah, Gran Turismo 7 it's got a big step in the right direction with the latest updates. Also, the roulette thing, the daily wheel spin, whatever you want to call it, has hopefully improved. I say that when I signed on, I got a 5-star one, which at least got me 100,000 credits. That was better than the 10,000 credits for doing the 26 whatever miles it is, and chance of slightly better cars on those. Still not as good as the GT Sport ones. Like I don't think. I don't know if the 6-star one can have like proper race cars and whatnot. But yeah, has made a big step in the right direction, at least with that. It might still be a case of some balancing. It might, you know, with some of those cars being unbelievably expensive, and I know real world cars are. Yeah, it does still go the opposite end, the opposite way to Forza. But if that is your more style of game, at least it's now not as truly awful as it once was. Because, well, you know, we're going to have to talk about the microtransactions on it, because it was a truly awful thing that they were trying to put it. The game was incredibly grindy, and it gave you the option to buy in-game money with actual money, and things like, you know, I think £20 million cars, whether it be McLaren F1, whatever it was that you wanted, to buy that was going to be about, I think I saw somewhere it was $100, which is absurd for a game that you've already paid. I mean, I got the 25th anniversary edition, which was about 80 quid, I think, which equates to around $110-ish dollars, maybe. I'm not sure what the conversion rate is these days. It might be a bit more actually, but you know, it's an insane amount of money for a single car, and you know, because the game was so grindy, it was trying to force you into spending absurd amounts of money for that one vehicle. Okay, it's been fixed to a degree now, but it's still a scummy thing to do. Yes, Gran Turismo Sport did have ways to buy cars. It was better, I want to say that. I think most of the cars you could buy for a couple of quid, because you didn't buy the in-game money, you bought the car specifically. And I think I never really look at these, I never really cared, but I think it was about £2-3 per car, which is still not something you should be doing. It's still a crappy thing to do in a game like Gran Turismo, but at least that's slightly better, and it's sad that I'm having to say that. Although on the whole, it was never really a thing that I was fussed about in there, because you could earn enough money, you won enough cars, and the game was more geared towards specific multiplayer racing. It was geared towards, you know, class racing, GT3, GT4 racing, so I was never as fussed with that one. Gran Turismo 7 is more about collecting a large selection of cars and having fun with those, and when that aspect is hidden behind a paywall or a massive grind, that does diminish the kind of fun of the game. As I said, it's been probably about 60% fixed with the latest update. Would still like to see more prize cars, more of these sort of special events, having interesting things as prizes, and yeah, it's still potentially going to become a grind fest once you've got all of the, you know, you can do the circuit experiences and get that money. Once you've got that once, though, that is kind of it, and that can go very quickly because of the absurd. I say the absurd, but because of the, you know, huge prices of some cars. Yeah, it is the opposite end of the spectrum, and may not be, I say, perfect for everyone. As I said, you can't really win. Whichever way you go, some people are going to enjoy some options and some aren't. There is a third option, though, that doesn't really get talked about anymore. As I said at the start, just about every single game has gone down this route of having some form of currency, if you will. However, that wasn't always the case, and personally, I would love to see games try some more interesting things. I like Forza, and I like Gran Turismo. I like the way that I like having this, you know, being able to buy the cars and completing through the game as you see fit, going whatever route it is that you want to. That's good fun, but it's not to say that other ways can't be fun as well, and that seems to have been forgotten a lot as of late. I'm going to bring up, well, I say 2 examples. First of all, let's go for Need for Speed Most Wanted. Now, this is not the classic, this is the 2012 one? The one that was essentially Burnout with real-world cars. Okay? Game not to everyone's tastes. I loved it because I love Burnout. Burnout Paradise is one of my favourite games of all time. Wonderful game, and yeah, it was not the Need for Speed that people were wanting. It was essentially a Burnout game, which is why I'm okay. Regardless, doesn't really matter what your opinion of the game was for this context, because that did vehicle unlocks with you sort of driving around the city and finding the cars. The vehicles were parked up around the map, and you drove about and found them. And that was actually really quite good fun. It made exploring worthwhile, and if you think of a game like Horizon 5, or even Test Drive Unlimited, for example, one with an even bigger open world, that gives you a great incentive to go exploring. Yes, I know you could just go on the internet and find a map if you wanted to cheat them, you know, and get all the car locations, sure. But, you know, it would be a fun thing to go and have, just randomly drive around and see what you might find. Is it realistic? No, but it's fun, it's different. It was something that game did differently. It meant for the first while of playing that game, it was always exciting going to find new areas of the map. And I mean, hell, you want to do a progression system, you can gradually unlock more and more of a bigger open world map if you want to, you know, leave it a little while before players can get some of the higher end cars. It was different, and I still remember that aspect of the game. When I was coming to do this video, I still remember that being, that was a fun, slightly quirky, different idea. And the same goes for the other game that I'm going to mention here, that is Enthusia, which, in fact, to me has perhaps one of the most entertaining ways of doing a racing game progression. Now, this came out on PS2. It came out around a similar time as Gran Turismo 4, and is often largely forgotten about because Gran Turismo was, the big mega hit. Enthusia was a little bit weird, and yeah, it was just hidden. It was a very good game. It had very, very good physics for the era. It had a fun, quirky car. It's not as big as Gran Turismo, but it had some really interesting stuff in it. And it did game progression completely different to anything else I've ever played, and anything else I've ever played since as well. It is wonderfully quirky. You start off the game with a selection of about 12 basic cars. Playing on the sides, pick whichever one you want, and you can go racing. And when you go into a race, at the end of the race, I think if you come in the top 4, something along those lines, you will win a random car from your opponents. So like a random selected car from the vehicles that you are racing against can be yours. You can win nothing. It's like a little roulette spin, and you can get nothing. But you will win something random that you are racing against. Which means your progression through the game is going to be completely unique to you. Because even if you pick the same starting car as your friend and do the same first race, the vehicle you're going to get at the end of it is probably going to be completely different. And then that vehicle may be used for different races. So different races will unlock, and then you'll do the next race, and you'll win something else completely different. And even if you win the same first car, you're going to have this diverging experience, this diverging single player, because you're always going to be driving different cars. And maybe you won't be winning something crazy. Maybe you'll win something crazy fast to start with. Maybe you win a Viper early on, or a EB110. Or maybe you'll be stuck with a Ford Thunderbird for ages. I seem to remember that a long time ago. Stuck with a Thunderbird, I couldn't seem to win anything because the game was just, the lucky roulette, the lucky draw was just giving me nothing. And because of that, that's one of the most interesting sort of experiences. And the game did it really, really well, because it wasn't forced to say you didn't have to win a race to progress. It had an odds-based system. Basically, if you came fourth with a car that was not expected to be able to come fourth, you got a huge ton of points. If you won a race with the fastest car, you didn't really get that many. So it was all about trying to score as many points as you could to move up the rank and unlock more events. And you did that by essentially overperforming your car, which was great fun because you were often driving weird and wonderful things that you unlocked randomly in races, and it encouraged you to experiment. And because of this sort of odd system, encouraged you to experiment, and because it kept giving you random cars, it encouraged you to drive different stuff. It was amazing. There is a drawback to this system, yes, of course. If you want a specific vehicle, well, it's a pain in the arse, because you can't go and buy it. Even if you go and select, you could see what vehicles were going to be in the race before you selected it, which was fine. But even if you wanted that one specific car, even if that car you wanted was in that race, well, it was at the mercy of the lucky dip. And, people who've watched my videos on this game from a few years ago will remember the trouble I had trying to get a Saxo. We wanted a Saxo VTS. I can't even remember why it started, but I wanted a Saxo VTS, and it probably took about 6 hours worth of streams to get hold of one. I got other stuff along the way, but just trying to get hold of one particular car could take a long, long time. But even then, though, you were making progress. Yes, I didn't get the car that we were looking for at that moment in time, but I was winning other stuff, and I was still progressing through the game, was still going along through the game. Okay, it was slightly sideways progress to what I wanted to do, but it was going forward. And I wish we would see more creative attempts, creative ideas when it comes to these progression systems, rather than just go, yeah, the economy, this earn money by that's the white run for everything. Because there are, I think, fun ways of doing it. There are more interesting ways of doing things. That being said, I can also see these are rife for problems, especially with the likes of Enthusia, with this whole lucky dip system. The potential for cramming in microtransactions that become mega transactions and all of that sort of bollocks is scary. So if something goes, please don't let it be EA or Take-Two or that try this, because goddamn, that would suck. It's a great idea. There is potential for a really good idea in that one. There's potential for a really fun, quirky idea that sadly I don't think we're going to see. It's often the case with this kind of slightly more out there idea. I'm not sure anyone is, I say, brave enough to go for it because it is a risk. It is a risk. Enthusia, sadly, as a wonderful game as it is, did not do very well. It did okay, I think. I don't think it lost a lot of money, but it didn't. You've all heard of Gran Turismo 4. A lot of you probably won't have heard of Enthusia or might not have heard of Enthusia. And that is the downside, as games can be very expensive to make, etc. It is a big gamble to go down that sort of route. I definitely think it could pay off. I would love to see it. I mean, the upshot of all of this is, look, you're never going to please everybody. Whatever avenue, whatever route a game takes, it's always going to be either too open or too closed for somebody. A game is never going to be absolutely perfect. It never will get that balance spot on, because that's an impossible moving target and it's completely subjective to everybody. I mean, the good news is that we have examples of both out there that are solid, good games. We have Horizon 5, we'll throw cars and all sorts of money at you so you can play around and prat around with what you want, and Gran Turismo is largely improved in its current state, is now what I'm talking about, as that little bit more kind of personal garage, if you like, to you, a little bit more challenging to get hold of the sort of super rare, fast, expensive, etc. cars. Slight caveat, yes, I know Gran Turismo is only on PlayStation. Maybe we'll see, like Forza Motorsport, whenever the next one comes along, maybe we'll see that take a more stringent approach to prize money, etc. Maybe that one will be more along the Gran Turismo lines. I don't know. That's pure speculation at this point. I mean, I wouldn't mind having Forza Motorsport series become a little bit tougher on that one, and then you keep Horizon as the big open playground. I feel like that would work with the themes of the game, you know, Horizon, open world, adventure-y, or throw lots of money and cars at you, and have Motorsport more along the lines of Gran Turismo. I would be okay with that personally. We'll have to wait and see on that, of course. I would love to see more quirky ideas tried. As I said, I suspect we're not going to, but it would be fun if I've made some people remember some weird older games. If there are other weird older games like Enthusia with quirky ways of giving you cars, I'd be interested to hear about them. But yeah, there we go. I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you enjoyed this one. That shall be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.